Hi everybody, my name is Danielle Nicole and welcome to Monetary Makeup. So I am really excited for today's video. I was finally able to snag the new Colourpop Pretty Fresh Pressed Face Powder, as well as the new Morphe Filter Effect Soft Radiance Concealer. Now I did pick up the fairest shade in each of these products, which is Fair 1 for the Colourpop powder, and then the shade Light 2 Cool in the concealer. So if you're over 30 and you have oily, dehydrated, acne-prone skin, then this video is definitely for you. I'll be doing swatches, a wear test, as well as a demo for you guys. And while we review these two new products, the finance topic of the day is going to be pertaining to taxes. And if you filed for unemployment in the 2021 year, this video is going to explain why you may be experiencing a delay when you file in the 2022 year for your 2021 tax return. So if you're excited to get started and enjoy the video while you're watching, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, and let's get started right now. Now, full disclosure, my skin is going through it right now. So of course I have oily skin, but it also gets extremely dehydrated, and right now we are in the dead of winter. Now, I don't want to apply a primer today because I don't want that to affect the new products we are going to be trying out. However, I do need to go in with a little bit of moisturizer. So I'm going to quickly apply the Bobbi Brown Vitamin Enriched Face Base. Now, I know I mentioned that I do have moisturizer on already. However, because my skin is so dehydrated right now, I really need to go in with something else. So I'm not a die-hard fan of Morphe. I have a couple of their brushes, but other than that, they're really not a brand I've tried too much from. So I happened to come across their new concealer. Now this is called their Filter Effect Soft Radiance Concealer, and the shade I picked up is Light 2 Cool. Now I did swatch this and it does look like it is not going to be a great shade for lightening. However, it does appear to be a great shade match for my overall skin tone. So I am going to be using this as a concealer as well as a foundation. I feel like that's pretty helpful because when you go in with foundation, sometimes it can affect the concealer a little bit. So this is the only complexion product I'm going to be wearing as far as concealer and foundation today. Now I'm going to swatch this next to a few of my other concealers. That way you can kind of gauge the depth and undertone of this shade. All right, it is swatch time. So first up is the Kosas Revealer Concealer in the shade 1.5C. Next up is the new Nyx Serum Concealer in the shade Light. Here is the Tarte Ultra Creamy Concealer in the shade 12B. So as you can tell, 12B is more of a lightening shade for me, whereas these other shades are more of my skin tone. And then last up is the new Morphe Concealer in the shade Light 2. So just upon looking at this swatch, I would say that the shade is not a lightening shade. It is more of my skin tone, as I mentioned in the intro. So I think it's going to be a good match for my overall skin. Now, I have to tell you guys, I swatched all these concealers when I first received the new Morphe concealer, which was just yesterday. And I let the concealers dry in my hand and finished up the rest of my makeup. And once I was done and these had all dried down, I was pretty surprised. I could visibly see that the Morphe concealer, this new one right here, it had blurred the pores on my hand so much in comparison to all of these others. So I'm really excited to see if it will do the same on my overall skin. You guys, I am so sorry that my hair is not fully put back, but I accidentally broke my headband, so I do need to pick up another one, so I apologize for that. All right, so I am first going to start with underneath the eyes and just do one eye at a time. I'm not really sure how quickly this dries down, so let's just get started with that much. Using my favorite concealer brush, this is from Shop Miss A, the AOA Studio Brush E102. So it actually does look a little bit lighter on my skin now that it's actually on here. So pretty surprised about that because the swatch on my hand, it just looked like it was going to be a little bit deeper. And I do have quite a few breakouts right now. I am very acne prone. I've just had acne my entire life. I always say, you know, my teens never left me, but it doesn't really bother me anymore. I used to be self-conscious about it when I was younger, but you know, there's nothing I can do about it. It's just life. So what are you gonna do? Okay, so that is just one very light layer. I don't like to go in with that gigantic triangle. It's just not my style. If you like to do that, that's completely fine. So what do you guys think about it so far? No concealer, concealer. So right away, I will tell you that it does look pretty nice. I do see a blurring effect to the under eyes immediately. However, I feel like it is a drier formula. I did just review the new NYX Serum Concealer, and that one seemed to be a little bit more creamy and hydrating. So I don't know quite yet if it is going to dry down a lot, but so far I'm just noticing that it's a little bit more of a drier formula. All right, I'm going to apply a little bit to my right eye. All right, I am really glad that I did one eye at a time. As I mentioned, it does dry down pretty quickly. Oh, this is going to drive me nuts with no headband. So sorry, you guys. I need to pick up a new one tomorrow. Okay, so I feel like I applied just a tiny bit more to my right eye. So I'm just going to put a tiny little dot on this side just to even it out. That way each eye is even. Okay, you guys, I know my skin is looking extremely pink right now. I'm not having a reaction or anything. It's just when I sit under the lights and I get even just the tiniest bit hot, all of the blood rushes to the surface of my face. So I know it looks really crazy right now in comparison to my pink or red face with the concealer. But so far, what do you guys think about the under eyes? What does it look like on camera? So I think it looks pretty good so far. I wouldn't say it's full coverage. I'm not sure if it claims to be. I kind of try not to read too much about the product. That way I'm not influenced from, you know, outside sources. But the one thing I am noticing, it is a little bit drying. I do have a little bit of dry or dehydration under there, and it is emphasizing that just a little bit so far. All right, now let's apply more to the rest of the skin. So I'm just going to start with a couple of dots, and if I have to add more, I can always do that. And I'm going to use my favorite sponge. This is the black sponge from Shop Missy. So have you guys ever tried using concealer as foundation? It's not something I really started trying out until the last year or so. And I feel like you have to use the right formula for it to look nice on the skin, you know, for what works best for your skin type. Now, so far, there are only two concealers that I quite enjoy as foundation, and that is the new NYX Concealer. You guys, I was so blown away. As soon as I applied that to my skin, and even at the end of the night, it just looked incredible. But also the Kosas Revealer Concealer. That's another one that is so great if you have texture, fine lines, so highly recommend those two as well. All right, so for the nose, I think I'm just going to put a stripe down on each side and start blending. Now, I don't know if it looks like I am applying a lot of concealer, but I wipe off the doe foot. That way I don't apply too much. I would much rather go in with a little bit and have to build up than have to take away. So I still have quite a bit of redness peeking through, but again, that's because I didn't apply very much. So I am just building this up a little bit around my nose, and then I always have this patch right here that gets extremely red. I don't know why, it's just where I happen to have color. So just trying to cover that up and see if this builds at all. Okay, so far I have concealer on the forehead as well as the left half of my face. So what do you guys think now that we are this far in? So no concealer on this portion, concealer on this side. Okay, so I have concealer on the entire left side of my face as well as the forehead and nothing on this side. What do you guys think? How does it look so far? So nothing, concealer. All right, so time to finish up the right half of my skin. All right, so my sponge started to dry up, and I do this pretty frequently. Instead of using water, I will reach for my favorite setting spray. This is the e.l.f. Plus Glow Dewy Mist. This is my favorite setting spray. Makes your skin look so fresh. So I did just add a little bit to my sponge, just so you guys know. And I am going back over underneath my eyes with that damp sponge. All right, and lastly, before I pull you guys in a little bit closer, I'd like to take just a little bit on the tip of my sponge and really get into the nose creases. That way I don't have any lines that stand out. Okay, so now that the concealer has been fully blended in, both under the eyes as well as the rest of the skin, what do you guys think about how this concealer is sitting? Okay, so immediately, I definitely notice a blurring effect on the skin. So I'm really excited that the swatch on my hand that I saw the other day that appeared to be blurring, I will say it does blur the skin as well. And overall, I think it looks okay. I think why I'm torn is because the blurring effect is fantastic. However, on the areas that I have dry patches of skin from dehydration, it does appear to be clinging to those. Now, I don't think it's something that you would notice if you were even a couple of feet away from me. So overall, I think it looks really nice. However, I am a little bit concerned, especially around my nose. I really blended in with that damp sponge, and I feel like it dries down really fast, but even though I blended really fast too, it's still emphasizing some of those dry patches. Can you guys see that on camera? I'm not sure. Now, the perimeter of the skin looks fantastic, and the under eyes look pretty nice too. Just a little concerned about it clinging to the dry patches so far. All right, so we will see how the concealer holds up. Next, let's move on to the Colourpop Pretty Fresh Powder. Now, as I mentioned, I picked up the fairest shade, which is Fair 1. Now, I am definitely not a fan of this packaging. It's not so much because it feels like cheap plastic. I mean, it's pretty small and everything. It's not super bulky or anything. However, I just sat here for a good minute and could not get this open. So I would imagine if you have any sort of acrylic nails, it is probably going to be difficult to open up because there's really nothing to push it up with other than your finger or your nail. But once you open it up, it does come with a full mirror as well as one of these little powder puffs here. And it's pretty thin, you know, it's okay. I probably won't be using this. So this is what the shade Fair 1 looks like in the pan. I am pretty excited because I was expecting this to lean pretty yellow or even warm or orange because unfortunately Colourpop does not typically make cool shades. So usually their neutrals lean pretty warm, but just from looking at it in the pan, I think it's going to be a good shade match for my pink cool skin. All right, so I am going to attempt to swatch this next to the concealers. Now keep in mind, it's a powder. It's probably going to blend into my skin pretty well, but I at least would like to, you know, attempt to do a swatch for you guys. Okay, so right here, that is the swatch right next to this concealer, so right here. So I'm not sure if you're going to be able to pick that up on camera or not. But just upon the swatch, it does not look yellow. It doesn't look warm. I wouldn't say it's cool, but I think it's neutral enough that I'll be able to get away with it. All right, just for the heck of it, I am going to use this sponge on my forehead, just in case you guys were wondering. So this is what it looks like when you tap the powder. So I'm thinking I'm just going to press this into my skin. Yeah, can you see? It looks like it's going to be a great shade. Not too deep, not too yellow, just right. Okay, so I just used the powder puff for the forehead, and I have to say the powder puff looks better than the brush when I did it the other day. So I think this is going to be a great travel-friendly compact if you just need to touch up throughout the day. I'm not noticing it really emphasizing anything on my forehead. However, my forehead is not a problematic area. It usually does look pretty smooth in that area. So next, let's move on to the rest of the skin. So I'm going to use my Sonia Kashuk buffing brush. This is a great powder brush. It is not extremely dense, however, it is dense enough for powder. So I love using this type of brush when you really need to stipple in the powder. Okay, so all I did was dip in extremely light one time, and this is how much powder picks up. So just note, be careful if you go in with the brush and you go in a little bit too hard, you may pick up more product than you would like to do. So all right, so let's start stippling this in to the left side. For the under eyes, I picked up the exact same concealer brush from AOA, the E102, and I just have a tiny bit of powder right there. So let's set the under eyes next. All right, now I'm going to take the exact same sponge I used for foundation because it's still damp, and let's go in and set the under eyes first. So I have hardly any powder on here. I don't like to use too much powder because it really emphasizes my texture, and you can always add more. All right, I just have a tiny bit more. Let's set the rest of the skin. I'm just barely dipping in, hardly getting anything. All right, so powder is on. Again, we use the powder puff on the forehead, brush on the left, damp sponge on the right. Now, what I will say so far about this powder is it is extremely lightweight. I can see this powder being fantastic for many people that don't like the feel of powder on their skin, if that makes sense. However, it is a very, very light coverage. So already I can tell you I would not recommend this powder as a powder foundation, but let's take a look at how the rest of the skin is looking like. So what do you guys think about the sponge versus the puff versus a brush? So much like the other day, I still prefer the look of a sponge. I think if I didn't have any texture or dryness, if I was just flat out oily, I probably would actually prefer the powder puff. However, because I do have texture and dry patches on the skin, I'm just not a fan of how it looks like with the brush, and this is the second time of me using it in this capacity. Now, I do like how the forehead looks with the powder puff, but if I had to pick a favorite way of application, I would definitely say the sponge side. Now, I'm not sure if you're going to be able to pick this up on camera, but if you take a look at my pores on this side, I feel like my pores look just a little bit more emphasized, whereas on this side, I just feel like it blurred the skin so nice. But what do you guys think? All right, well, I'm just going to add a touch more makeup and I will be right back. All right, you guys, so I just finished up the rest of my makeup and wanted to show you what it looks like so far. So once again, this was the brush side and this was the sponge side. So far, it's looking pretty good. I will say the powder is mattifying. However, it doesn't look extremely dry, if that makes sense. I am a little concerned around my nose and where I have those dry patches, but overall, I think it looks pretty good. So let's cut into the topic of the day, and then I will meet you back here at the end of the night for a wear test. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the topic of the day. So I think it is no secret that last year was a struggle for many. So of course, many folks filed for unemployment. So I just received notification from the CPA that I work with that if you filed for unemployment in 2021 and you are expecting your 1099-G to come in the mail soon, it has been announced, at least in the state of Michigan, to not expect those forms to be mailed out until at least the end of February. Now, I understand everyone watching may not live in Michigan. However, if you do live in the United States and you did file for unemployment, a lot of the times these tips that we hear from one specific state typically follow through with other states as well. So if you are expecting your 1099G form to come in the mail any day now, don't be surprised, there is most likely going to be a delay. Now, the other thing is, a lot of the times when the government releases these deadlines or the IRS releases these deadlines, typically it is common to then see additional extensions. So I just wanted to quickly mention that for those who did file for unemployment in Michigan and or the states. Don't fret if you haven't received those forms, they are coming, so just hang tight. Now, if the end of February comes and goes and you still do not have your 1099G, then I would recommend reaching out to your CPA. Perhaps they could provide a little bit additional insight as to where your forms may be. So I hope the topic of the day was helpful for those who filed for unemployment in Michigan or the states. If you have any questions, don't forget to comment monetary makeup down below and let me know. All right, I will see you guys at the end of the night for my final thoughts and a wear test. All right, I apologize for interrupting the video. However, I did want to give you guys better lighting for these swatches. So the very first swatch right here is the Colourpop powder in the shade Fair 1. The first concealer swatch is the new Morphe concealer in Light 2. Next swatch over is the new Nyx Serum Concealer in the shade Light. The third concealer swatch is Tarte Ultra Creamy in 12B. And the last swatch is the Kosas Revealer Concealer in the shade 1.5C. Hi everybody, so I just got home from work and let me tell you, it has been a long day and my makeup has been on now for about 12 hours. So before I get into my final thoughts, let me lean in a little bit closer as I always do. That way you can take a look at how my skin is looking like at the end of the day. All right, so if you remember, the forehead was the little puff that came in the packaging. The left side was the brush side. And then my right side was the damp sponge side. So what do you guys think about how the skin is looking? Please ignore the mascara that is transferred. As much as I love Lash Princess, it always transfers on me because my lashes hit in that area. So aside from that, just wanted to show you what the skin is looking like. All right, so let's start with the Morphe Soft Radiance Concealer since that was the first product I applied. Oh my gosh, you guys, this mascara that is transferred, I'm sorry, but I have to get this off really quick. It looks so bad. One second. Okay, so my overall thoughts about this concealer is I don't mind it underneath the eyes. I think it looks pretty good. As I mentioned, it did dry down pretty quickly and it definitely leans more matte. However, I don't think it really looks super drying under my eyes, but if you have very dry under eyes, then I wouldn't say I would particularly recommend this. However, if you are looking for something that has a soft matte finish, it's not a bad one, but it's not my favorite either. Now, as far as using this concealer on the rest of the skin, I am just not a fan of using this as foundation. So remember how I had those dry patches, especially around my nose? So I'm not sure if you can still see that. This looks so funny, you guys. Oh my gosh. But I want it to be helpful, but see, like right there, and then on this side, you can really see it kind of gunking up in that area. My forehead looks okay, but as far as the rest of the skin, I'm just not a fan. Now, what I will say is if you don't have any sort of texture or fine lines or any dryness, then you may very well like this concealer. However, what I recommend is the new NYX Bear With Me Serum Concealer. I have used this almost every single day since I tried it, not only as concealer, but also as foundation. And every time I use it, it looks so beautiful. It's not super matte, it's not super dewy, it just looks so natural, but it doesn't get cakey or anything like that. And as far as around my nose and wherever the rest of my skin is dehydrated, it doesn't do any emphasizing or anything like that. So if you're in a situation where you have to pick one over the other, I would absolutely recommend the NYX Serum over the new Morphe. All right, let's talk about the Colourpop Pretty Fresh Powder. Okay, so before I even forget to mention this, I'm going to mention it first. So even though I have dehydration, I still have oily skin. Now, typically at the end of the day, usually my skin has quite a bit of oils coming through. In fact, after a long day like today, it usually looks really greasy almost, and it looks like I need to blot. This powder does an incredible job at controlling oils. On all 3 different areas of the different application methods, I just think the amount of oils it controlled is crazy. I'm usually so much more oily by now, so overall the mattifying effect without sucking the life out of your skin either is a definite plus for this powder. Now, ironically, I actually prefer how this powder looks underneath the eyes than the rest of the skin. So I know that kind of contradicts what I just said, but I really do enjoy how the perimeter of my skin looks, and especially with the oil control. However, my only concern is if you have any sort of dry skin, dry patches, dehydration, it does cling a little bit. So what I'm actually thinking of doing is simply using this powder in targeted areas. So instead of going all over like I did today, I might use it underneath the eyes, but more importantly in the areas that I get particularly oily, because it does such a great job at controlling oils. So for example, I'll probably skip around my mouth and around my nose and just use a little puff in here to kind of dab over my T-zone, but again, skipping those spots. Now, I wish I had a drugstore alternative to present to you guys as an option. However, really the only 2 powders that I'm just head over heels in love with is the Huda powder. The shade I use is Cupcake, and then the By Terry Hyaluronic Hydra Powder in translucent. I know the price tags are completely different. However, those powders, there's just something about the way they look on the skin. I do quite like the e.l.f. Halo powder, so perhaps that could be another option, but it does provide a different finish, as the e.l.f. Halo is more of a natural luminous finish, no glitter or anything like that, whereas this one is kind of like a soft matte. So I guess overall, I do think these products are okay. Definitely going to be using this powder in the T-zone, or specifically in the areas that I get oily. And then I will be testing out this Morphe concealer under the eyes in a few different application methods. So overall, it just really comes down to your preference and if you think it's worth giving it a try. So now I want to hear from you guys. Have you picked up either of these 2 products? If you did and you tried it out, what was your experience? Let us know what your skin type is. Let us know all of the details down below. All right, I do hope you guys enjoyed the review as well as the topic of the day. Don't forget to give the video a thumbs up if you did enjoy it. And I want to thank you guys so much for watching another one of my videos, and I look forward to seeing you in my next video. Bye guys.